This is Bob from Speed Gems. Once again, we're going to talk about some adapters that we're making. This is a new one. It's about the Ford Ecoboost motor. It's the 2.3 four-cylinder that's found in the Mustangs. This one happens to be out of a 2015 Mustang, and it's 310 horsepower. We adapted it to a Chevrolet so that it could be basically put in place of Chevrolet motors and other vehicles. This is the first Ecoboost we've done. We're going to do another. So today we're going to show you how to put this whole kit on this, and I'm going to go through the steps a little more carefully than I have in the past. All right, so we're going to start with this motor, and this is something you can take into consideration on the Ecotech motor too. The GM Ecotech has the same exact design. It's almost like Ford and General Motors got together and collaborated on this. They're so close. So the first thing we're going to do is, when you take the 6R80 off of this, or the 5 or 6 speed off it that you had, when our kit goes on, this water outlet has a portion of it interferes with the installation of our kit. So what we're going to do here is, and I've already got it loose, there's 4 bolts holding it on and a few little things in the way, but basically it just slides off. It's O-ringed here, so it's not a big deal to get it off. And there's a simple gasket it's reusable, but we get a new one. And by the way, when we send you the kit, the modifications that you're going to do to this, we're sending these little pieces along with it. We want it done in a specific way, mainly because they've got the temperature sensor in there, and we want to keep that into the water. You can't just put it in the hose somewhere. It's got to be in the water to work correctly. So this is what it's going to look like when you're done. We're going to plug the bottom, because that's actually the piece that's stuck down, and then you had this water hose coming in from the bottom, and that's in the way of both the transmission and the adapter kit. So that's coming off. We're going to tap and plug that. All these pieces just screw on, no problem at all. It's a pretty simple modification. All right. Basically just pops back on both the O-ring, 4 bolts with a new gasket. All right, now we're going to put on the adapter plate, now that we've got the cooling system outlet modification shown. Hollow dowel pins, bolts are going to go through them. You can see how close it is to that water outlet and why that would have been a problem. I hope everybody noticed. I start them all before I tighten any. That's a good rule of thumb in all mechanical work. The last 3 bolts go through from the engine side, 3 different lengths. Longest one to the top, descending in size down to the end. Now we're going to show you the pretty much the meat of the kit. The adapter plate's only one part of it. This part gets installed onto the torque converter. So I thought I'd show you the individual components and how it installs on the converter. This is the torque converter drive plate. This is a part that will be bolted to the other part of the torque converter spacer. This is the part that will actually retain the torque converter and gets bolted on as if it was a GM flex plate. Takes the place of it. It's high tensile steel and has the bolt patterns to handle either the 3-bolt small GM pattern, 3-bolt large GM pattern, 6-bolt large GM pattern, or the LS pattern. So it's pretty versatile. This is going to end up being bolted to this. This assembly comes pre-assembled. Please don't take it apart. It's pinned here when we make it. So, okay, this piece pilots into the crankshaft. This part will end up being bolted to the factory Ecoboost flex plate. The front of this is a duplicate of a Chevrolet crankshaft, so it will both pilot the GM converter and it will hold the flex plate that the converter will bolt to. So start by bolting the, I'll call it the torque converter drive plate rather than the flex plate. The flex plate's bolted to the engine. Of course, I'm just zipping them in with the gun for installation purposes. You'll be torquing them on, maybe Loctiting them. Okay, this whole assembly is going to be bolted to the torque converter before it's spun into the transmission. Of course, this one's just taking 3 bolts, and then they would be torqued. Okay, this whole assembly then be put on the transmission, and then we load the transmission onto the back of the engine. Okay, so the next step is we take this assembled torque converter, and it's going to get spun into the transmission in preparation for being put onto the engine. And what we've got here is a 4L80E. Pretty heavy converter, as everybody knows, about an 80-pound converter. Okay, next step is, now that we've got the cooling system modification done, we've got the adapter plate bolted onto the engine, we've got the torque converter assembly completely assembled and spun into the transmission. Now we're going to take the transmission and install it onto the adapter plate. And of course, before we tighten any of these bolts, we're going to make sure that the torque converter is spun in all the way and we have clearance. So the transmission's going up to the adapter plate. I'm not going to pull it up there with the bolts. Okay, so it goes up nice. We have our clearance. All right, next step is to get the torque converter assembly bolted to the Ecoboost flex plate. It's basically just exactly the same as putting the stock Ford 6R80 on, because we're using the stock Ford flex plate, and the bolts are going in the stock location. They've got a nice cutout in the block for doing that, plenty of clearance. Just get them in there. There's 6 of them, and it's a heavy-duty flex plate, so they obviously planned on the thing making some power. You can get at the flex plate to turn it from in here with a screwdriver. You can go to the front of the engine and turn it with a ratchet and a socket. All right, last thing to do before we're done. We got the torque converter all bolted up while you weren't watching. Don't you love editing? You don't have to waste your time watching me turn bolts in. Well, the next thing is the starter. You can see that this starter in our adapter plate is a tight fit. It's the factory Ford starter. We've taken this 3rd rib down a little bit for clearance, because it has to fit over the factory Ford hollow dowel pins. And that just makes it a lot easier to install. There are 2 hollow dowel pins that this fits onto. It locates it into the block. It basically goes right back where it was from the factory with the factory bolts. Okay guys, there you have it. The first time in the world anyone's seen a 4L80E bolted to a Mustang Ecoboost engine. Won't be the last. If you have any questions, you can call us at 763-767-4480 or visit our website, www.transmissionadapters.com. Thanks for watching.